Okay, so we are having our Friday night with White Lotus of Light chat. We're going to be covering a lot of interesting stuff, astrology around the election over the next few months, and how it's going to look like the Luciferians and Molochians power struggle is going to go badly, and that the Molochians are going to win. And people need to prepare for that and what that looks like. Astrologically speaking, some really interesting geopolitical events, mostly here in the United States, but also including in other countries. And so all of that is to come, but I'm going to just take a minute here real quick to talk to you about some offerings through White Lotus of Light. And the first one is that there's an Introduction to Vedic Astrology course, which begins the 18th of September, just about 2 weeks from today. And this beginner-friendly 8-week course allows you to watch weekly lectures in your own time, which is really great for adult learning. And it gives you the skills to interpret astrological charts. You'll learn to apply the ancient wisdom of Vedic astrology to your life for better decision-making and insight. I use Vedic astrology all the time to help advise very powerful people who are quite wealthy and how they can best take advantage of planetary energies. Just as a single example, like when Mercury's retrograde, you use that as a time period to do planning rather than to try and push forward with new agendas. And that's just one example. And I use the tool of Vedic astrology, which lets us look at karmas and how to interpret karmas that are going to unfold in our life in order to give people heads up to what's going to happen in their life. And I use this to advise very powerful business people primarily at this point. And so you can use it as well in your own private life. And in this course, you're going to discover the deeper spiritual aspects of astrology and how it can guide you towards greater self-awareness. This course will also expand your knowledge of the symbolism used in the esoteric and occult realms throughout human history. Astrology is the absolute backbone of all esoteric and occult traditions. And if you understand astrology and its symbolism, it'll open your eyes to all manner of things in the world. That's a big part of why I'm able to interpret all these different events worldwide through a very special lens of understanding occult and esoteric practices. It comes from my foundational understanding of these archetypes and symbols that we see in the zodiac and in astrology. We're also having the Angelic Magic course September 19th, and I highly, highly recommend this. It completely changed my life working with the angels. People say, oh, how do you know it's angels? Well, I went from having a hardcore pornography addiction, from having a disastrous love life, from having real difficulties at times being a good father to my son, difficulties with my mother who's still alive. My father passed a long time ago, but just things with family and all this kind of stuff. And since I started working with the angels, I was able to break that addiction, that 28-year addiction. I'm a better lover to partners. I'm a better friend to my friends. I'm a better father to my son, and I'm a better son to my mother. I'm just a better person all around. And so the angels and invocation, which is what you learn, where you invoke the angels to help you get in greater alignment with natural law and your soul's divine purpose, is unbelievably powerful. And in the 7-week course, you'll discover how angelic magic can transform your life like it did mine, bringing greater clarity, inner peace, and connection to your true spiritual nature. You gain the tools to connect with powerful angelic beings for healing, protection, guidance in your spiritual journey. And you experience step-by-step instruction with practical rituals, meditations, and exercises to invoke angelic energies. You are able to tap into ancient divine knowledge that has been used by mystics for centuries to connect with the higher realms. By studying this course, you will join a supportive, like-minded group of spiritual seekers dedicated to expanding their consciousness and the spiritual upliftment of humanity. It's very beautiful, the social connections that form out of these classes. Because I believe that spiritual growth and empowerment should be accessible to all, I do offer both of these programs with financial assistance for individuals who are committed to deepening their understanding of Vedic astrology or angelic magic, but may need help with course fees. So if you're feeling called to join one of these transformative courses but are limited by finances, we have something called the Sacred Support Program. And that provides a way to access this life-changing knowledge at a reduced cost or through flexible payment options. I always ask that if you can afford it, even if it's a bit of a stretch, that you pay in installments or whatever, and that if you can just outright afford these classes and you feel called, please pay the full price. That helps in a certain sense to subsidize people who perhaps don't have the same level of finance. And one of the great things is with both astrology, but especially angelic magic, you can learn tools of self-transformation that'll help call in greater abundance, call in love, call in a freedom from the self-limiting beliefs that have kept you from fully harnessing all your natural God-given talents. And so links for the courses and the Sacred Support Program can be found in the description below. Without further ado, here is tonight's White Lotus of Light, Friday night with White Lotus of Light. Here it is. Okay, hello and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light. It's Friday night with White Lotus of Light, and we're going to go back to sort of more traditional format here. Last week was a really important message that really came from a deep and authentic place for me, but this week we're sort of back at it. And I want to talk about this huge astrological shift that's occurring and how that's going to color things both geopolitically, spiritually, and experientially. And I think that you will find that there is a real tilt towards what appears to be darkness, when in fact there's actually like great, wonderful energies that are coming in here in the not too distant future. And so I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to pull this screen open. Give me just a moment as I move some things around. All right. So this is the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and also contrasted with the signing of the Constitution. And the reason that I'm looking at these two elements is because there are very interesting similarities between the Revolutionary War period of time and what's happening right now in the skies, especially around Pluto. So at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, you will note that Pluto here was at a fairly late degree of Capricorn, 27 degrees. It was also what's called out of bounds. That's that 2330. That means that it's not within sort of the purview of the sun and dominant. You also see that Venus and Mars, and Venus in particular, very interesting there. Mars, very interesting there, also being out of bounds. Out of bounds planets are a bit erratic and extraordinarily powerful. So this is a time of extreme transformation. Pluto transforming and rebelling and killing and then rebirthing power structures, right? Killing the power structure of the monarchy in the United States and then rebirthing it into the constitutional republic of the United States. You also see a strong influence from Mars. This was really what made the war really solidified in terms of an ideological, philosophical war. There was a lot of preamble before this, you know, like the Boston Tea Party, all that sort of stuff. But the signing of the Declaration of Independence was this is it, we're fighting to the bitter end, no matter what. And so you see that on this day, Mars was out of bounds, very powerful, very erratic, very aggressive energy of Mars, planet of war. And then you have Venus out of bounds. Venus, the light bringer, right? The Venus, especially when she's in morning star form, is very closely associated with Lucifer mythologically. Also Hathor, which is sort of the female goddess of the Egyptians that held a lot of Luciferian qualities to it. And you see how actually when Twitter became X, right, and then it had the half compass kind of mark that he created for it, right, the half compass and square of the Masons, right, that was done on the holiday for Hathor in ancient Egyptian terms. So very interesting that Musk would do that then, and not an accident, of course. So you see these three planets out of bounds, marked in red, and very powerful in various different signs. You can also see Venus is here in the sign of Cancer, so creation of a new homeland, because Cancer rules the mother. Mars is in Gemini, and Gemini is one of the very philosophical signs. It's also a magical sign, a magical declaration being signed that day that's very aggressive in character and will doubtless lead to war. So there, you know, most of the founding fathers were Scottish Enlightenment Freemasons, and some of them were also, like Jefferson, Templar, an even higher degree of Masonry, and really the progenitor of Masonry is Templarism. And of course, you know, I'm not going to go deep on this, but just for people who don't watch the channel a lot, Freemasonry, to me, is just simply a recruiting ground for Luciferian, Molochian, and even most high affiliated secret societies. And it's neither pure evil nor pure good. There are many different people who go there that are drawn to it as sort of a selecting ground for deeper mystery schools and secret societies, for example, the Templar. So then if you look down here at the signing of the Constitution, you have out of bounds moon, stroke of genius, right? Like really unusual thinking, stroke of genius. You have out of bounds Mars, again, the founding of a country. It's in the sign of Cancer, and therefore debilitated, but out of bounds. And so you have a founding of a new motherland, right? But it's going to be one that is going to be very warlike, right? Because make no mistake, the Luciferians are not afraid to wage war in the slightest, and that's exactly what happened. And again, you have out of bounds Pluto yet again, but now in the sign of Aquarius. Okay, so with that backdrop, what you need to understand is Pluto just retrograded into Capricorn as of September 1st. And you'll notice that right around that time when Pluto retrograded back into the sign of Capricorn, right? Which I'll get into more in a second, it suddenly seems like Molochians seem to be winning in a few areas. And that's going to continue this, what appears to be on the surface, the Molochians winning and the Molochians flexing on everyone as they're wont to do. So you have Durov, the founder and CEO of Telegram, being arrested in France. And now there's being changes to Telegram's like what their end user license agreement stuff. Is being changed and altered, saying that there's no protection anymore. Things can be sent to authorities if it's criminal, whatever. Very disturbing. And then you have Twitter was kicked out of Brazil literally the day before Pluto retrograded into Capricorn. That creepy looks like a James Bond villain guy in Brazil. Like, I swear to God, they have like 1960s central casting for James Bond movies, and they're just churning them out. Klaus Schwab, that Moraes in Brazil. The list just goes on and on. Augustin Carstens, the head of the Bank of International Settlements. It's wild. These guys just all look like Bond villains. It's so funny. So this sort of theme of what looks like the Molochians winning is going to continue for the next few months as Pluto will be in Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of tyranny, right? The lower aspect of Capricorn is the tyrant. It's ossified political structures that are negative. It can also be like really beautiful, really efficient political and power structures, right? Not all Capricorn human beings, for example, are evil, of course, but I'm talking about the lower aspect of Capricorn. And I don't want many Capricorn viewers, which should be about 1/12 of you, feeling like I'm picking on you or your sign. That's not the case at all. Martin Luther King, roundly considered a good person, was a Capricorn. So there's been lots of wonderful Capricorns through the years. Someone who I think gets a really unfair shake, Richard Nixon, also a Capricorn. I think that history will be much kinder on Richard Nixon in the future. So those are some examples. Nonetheless, Capricorn is the sign of tyranny, and it's also associated with the devil card in tarot. And it's the lower aspect of Saturn, aka Moloch. In the devil tarot card, the devil's sitting on a black cube, the lower aspect of Saturn, and there's chains around a male and female human being, but the chains are loose. They can be taken off at any time because Moloch operates through fear and getting people to consent and break down out of fear because they've forgotten their divine nature and they think there's only the material nature. So Pluto is the gateway between realms. He's a guardian of the threshold in a lot of ways. And I got to turn off my phone there. I donated 1 million years ago to Bernie Sanders campaign. Whoopsies. And ever since then, I get inundated by Democrat asking for money. I'm going to change my number literally to get away from it. So yeah, it's the lower aspect. So Pluto is the guardian of the threshold between realms. He's the great transformer and the ultimate alchemist planet. It heralds generational changes, in particular around dominant thought forms. And during the American Revolution, as I said before, Pluto moved from late Capricorn, right? 2733 Capricorn, pretty late, starting to oppose, people were starting to oppose that tyrant. As you move to the end of a sign, you begin to get flavors of the next sign as you're on that getting cuspy like that. And so you have this opposition starting in the US to oppose the tyranny of King George. And you see that during the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And then it moves into Aquarius when the Constitution was signed, showing power being moved to the people. So Capricorn is retrograding into Capricorn, or I mean, Pluto's retrograding into Capricorn, and it will soon be back in prograde motion. And when it goes back into prograde motion, it'll move out of Capricorn, and it'll be out of Capricorn for almost 250 years before we see it back in Capricorn again. Just like a couple of years ago, this 27 degrees Capricorn, Pluto, I think it was in 2023 or 2022, I think it was 2023, Pluto moved past that point. And all of a sudden you saw this, lots of people were talking about the Revolutionary War. You saw things of like Google's Gemini was like doing black people and Chinese people as founding fathers, women even, you know, just nonsense, like an attempt to try and thwart that rising similar energy that was occurring in the US, this sudden like extreme desire for liberty, again, in particular. So the good news is that it will move out of Capricorn into Aquarius for good, not retrograding back into Aquarius again, or I mean, not retrograding back into Capricorn again, not being in Capricorn again for almost 250 years from now. And by then it will probably be the higher octave of Capricorn, because we'll be well out of Kali Yuga by then. We'll be, even by sidereal reckoning, we'll be in the age of Aquarius. So it'll be completely different then, and likely no one watching this will be alive then, although I do think there's going to be crazy technologies that come out that'll allow for massive life extension in the not too distant future. So we look now at Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, and you can see here Pluto is at 00 Aquarius. So this is 2 weeks to the day from the election. So what does that mean? What that may mean is it may appear that the Molochians have won. The Molochians may cancel the election. The Molochians may do other shenanigans, right? I have to be careful because it's on YouTube. So who knows? Things may look very grim on the election and for the period directly after that. And that may be part of the Luciferian gambit, to make things look extra dark, because it's always darkest before the dawn, right? To make things look extra dark, to really rally the people to their cause. So it moves out of Capricorn to Aquarius on November 19th. And on that day, you will also see an incredible 3 out-of-bounds planets. I also have some asteroids down there, but we can ignore those. Moon, Mercury, and Venus are all out of bounds. 2 of the 3 of them are highly related to Lucifer, Mercury and Venus. So Moon out of bounds in Cancer seems to indicate incredibly powerful and out-of-control emotions and likely chaos. There is a chaos and instability that's anchored around the desire to have a sanctuary, right? Capricorn rules the mother, and actually that symbol literally is the breast. So there's a desire to, oh my gosh, I want safety, I want security, probably because there's been 2 weeks of intense chaos, and everybody kind of wants that mama. Everyone wants that breast to nurse on and just to feel safe and comforted again. And people want safety. People are going to want safety. And there's a chaos and instability and desire to have sanctuary. And this is shown just like there's 2 breasts, there's 2 ideologies, just like there's 2 hemispheres of the brain. There's 2 ideologies or beliefs warring over what is the best way to preserve safety in the home, in the homeland. So there's going to be all these Democrats that are utterly convinced, because of weaponized empathy and MK Ultra and all the hormones and chemicals, the hormones they've taken themselves, hormones that are in food and the water supply, all the different stuff that has caused them, you know, chemicals, heavy metals that have caused them to be susceptible to the Molochian form of mind control and the weaponized empathy, right? The reversal stuff the Molochians do. And those are Democrats who are under the sway of Moloch. They're going to be like, oh my God, if Trump gets in, which, you know, who knows, Trump may win the election outright, or there could be other chaos that occurs during the election, right? Either way, the Democrats are going to be desperate and think that it's an existential threat to them if they don't win, right? I'm talking about regular people, not the people at the top. People at the top are very correct to see an existential threat. But most of the people who are just regular Democrats at the bottom are dead wrong. It has nothing to do with them. The Luciferians couldn't care less about them, other than that they're supporting their rival and they care about them to some extent. Unless they've done something illegal, then the Luciferians will very much care. So the opposite side of that coin is the Luciferians will be fighting for liberty and free speech. The Luciferians will also correctly, at the low level of the regular person, and of course at the high level, will see it as an existential threat to liberty and the idea, just the flame of liberty, the last holdout worldwide. Right now, it seems to be the United States. It's the last place where there's truly freedom of speech. Where else can you find that on Earth? Maybe in certain third world countries that have unsophisticated governments, but almost anywhere you see a highly sophisticated, technologically advanced government, you see a beatdown on free speech, with the exception of the United States. And so the Luciferians are going to be fighting tooth and nail for liberty and free speech. And the moon out of bounds here also shows unusual genius, which can solve problems in a way no other mental patterning can. Just absolute strokes of genius that may look bizarre and may look like that'll never work, but then it does, and it works incredibly well. So unusual solutions used by the Luciferians as they turn the corner on the Molochians, because I see this as really the pivotal moment this day, even if it's not like some major event that happens on that day. When we look back historically and the information comes out, as much as comes out, it'll be totally from a Luciferian tilt because they'll be the victors, right? But when we look back historically, you're going to see that this was the day when things shifted in favor of the Luciferians, and it just built in momentum from there. That doesn't mean the Molochians are done fighting. No, no, no. They have at least like another, few years where they're going to be fighting tooth and nail for their survival, but they're going to be tight. They're going to be fighting retreating, because they're going to be being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and more into a corner. So we also see Mercury out of bounds in Sagittarius, showing a fight over philosophical ideals. And Sagittarius marks the Luciferian impulse in the form of a man moving beyond his lower animal Molochian nature in the form of centaur, a centaur that's climbing and ascending a mountain. The centaur is a horse from the waist down, right? And where is the strongest impulse that humans have? The strongest impulse that humans have that links us to the animal realm is the sexual impulse, right? And it's very easy to control and lower humanity through the sexual impulse. The Molochians have been doing it for millennia, around taboo sex, around denial of sex, and around bastardization of sex and the sexual impulse with the harm of children or assault in general, right? And so that's that lower nature is shown in the horse aspect of the centaur. But there's also the higher nature. There's the higher chakras as well. And those chakras pull humanity upwards spiritually. So we see the centaur, which is actually Chiron, the wounded healer, right? Who is on his journey of healing and redemption. He's climbing the mountains in search of wisdom and a cure to this wound, right? In search of wisdom. And that's the human half of Sagittarius the centaur, showing here a journey to higher philosophical ideals and away from the enslavement to the lower animal nature, including fear of death, the fear that the Molochians use to control everyone. This also shows intense, rapidly oscillating thought and mental instability due to being out of bounds, but also extreme genius. So you're going to see extreme genius of an intuitive form, where there's just a stroke of genius that's completely unexpected and out of the blue, and sort of bizarre inductive reasoning that'll come from the moon. And then you'll see genius in the form of long-term, sophisticated left brain planning that is also unusual and tends to pivot around a philosophical change. So probably fifth generational warfare in the form of very sophisticated Luciferian propaganda will suddenly begin to spread around this time. And I have a feeling as to why that is, which I'm going to get into here shortly. You also have Venus out of bounds, which is rising as morning star in the full Luciferian light bearer, light bringer mode in the sign of Capricorn, where it is saying a new dawn occurs in power structures. And despite the Molochian darkness of night, a new era is dawning as the tide begins to turn in earnest. Venus is out of bounds in Capricorn, and therefore able to impose her will on the symbolism of that sign. And so love of liberty in particular will be very strong during this period of time and will shake current power structures to their core. What happens in the United States is going to send a shock wave. It's going to be a seismic shift because it's happening in the very earthy sign of Capricorn, also the sign of initiation, in the sense of initiating action, because it's cardinal Earth. So shaking the very foundations of money and power structures, Capricorn. So it's going to shake it to their core. Finally, you have, and this is incredible, stationary direct Saturn in the spiritual and high vibrational sign of Pisces, showing a powerful shift of governing structures into a new spiritual stage for humanity. Like, the astrology on this day is wild as fuck and amazing as can be, super interesting. Yeah, I just see it as this like pivotal moment. So now I'm going to change gears here, and I'm going to agency Russia Today. And this was part of a scheme to create and distribute content to U.S. audiences with hidden Russian government messaging. Well, what's interesting about that is then Ashley Sinclair, who's pretty good and pretty consistent on Twitter, a bit the opposite of these guys. She is an intellectual and a very thoughtful and goes beneath the surface. The thing I don't like about Tim Pool and Benny Johnson is they just skip along the surface, never going deeper. I'm not sure who that guy is on the left. I've seen his face, but I also kind of don't care. I guess it must be, oh, it's Dave Rubin. Rubin's bet much, it's several orders of magnitude better than those other two. So I'm not trying to include Rubin in there. I just didn't recognize his face, but I know who Rubin is. He's another order of magnitude more sophisticated. Sorry, Benny Johnson particularly like gets force-fed to me on the algorithm and annoys me. So Ashley Sinclair says these influencers named appear to have been deceived about funding sources by Lauren Chen, founder of Tenet. Secondly, Lauren Chen, right? Interesting last name. Makes me wonder if she's just Russian. The alleged Russian nation receiving millions for propaganda, allegedly, has been actively discouraging votes for Trump and dividing the right. And she does that on a super hardcore stance around abortion. And she says that Trump has come out and said that if abortion was to attempted to be all abortion banned, all cases in all states, that if he was president, he would veto that. First of all, he has to say that if he wants to get elected. He has to say that because there's some small percentage of people that will come to him. But this election, he has to win every frickin' vote he can, or else he's screwed because he has to overcome shenanigans, right? So it's then interesting because she's saying that and she's like, no, I'm not gonna vote for Trump now, right? What? Right? So you're going to let Biden win and they'll just have unfettered access. They had frickin' mobile abortion clinics and vasectomy. Well, not entirely opposed to that one outside the DNC, right? So she goes, man who identifies as a woman campaigning for Trump by saying that Trump and Vance will protect abortion access. This is your conservative movement? I'm out. It's not conservative enough for me. Purity test, right? Carl, no. As a Brit that has had to deal with the impotence of the conservatives, surely you can appreciate right-wingers who are skeptical of Trump and the GOP slide leftward. This isn't about demanding all or nothing from Trump. It's about reminding him that he should at least be eager to pander to his conservative Christian break, blah, 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 right? And so she just keeps going out and attacking Trump. And Tim Pool at times has said stupid stuff along those lines as well. And so it looks to me like this campaign is actually to maybe prevent Trump from winning, or at least, again, Luciferian gambit, a campaign they knew would be, the Russians knew that this was a very surface level campaign, and that if it comes out and all the details come out, it makes it look like, if you go a little bit into it, that the Russians are afraid of Trump winning. And Putin recently came out and said he would greatly prefer Kamala to win. So that really puts a fly in the ointment of the whole Russiagate 2.0 thing they're trying to drum up right now. And so I just think that's interesting. Right now, this drops right after a way, way bigger story. And that way, way bigger story, which it looks like I don't have a link to handy, is that Governor Kathy Hochul, Democratic governor of New York, had an active Chinese spy as something like her chief of staff, a very powerful position within the governor's office there in New York. New York, of course, being a Molochian stronghold. The CCP, while there is an internecine war, according to the angels, going on between Molochian energies and Luciferian energies, even within the CCP, which is actually quite heartening news to hear that, they're still definitely very much Molochian as of this moment. And they're attempting clearly to influence the outcome of the American election. And it looks pretty clear to me because of Eric Swalwell, Democrat in California, was sleeping with that Chinese spy. You see wherever the Molochians are, there's Chinese influence, right? Even when they're Republican, like Mitch McConnell, his wife is Chinese and is related to high-level CCP people. So you see that Chinese influence everywhere. And so immediately when that Governor Kathy Hochul thing drops, all of a sudden they've been sitting on it for a while. All of a sudden the Justice Department talks about this, immediately distracting from what's happening with the Chinese spies and getting people to focus on this Russian influence campaign. So there's news out now that Durov has made some changes to the what's happening with Telegram, and they changed it from all Telegram chats and group chats are private amongst their participants. We do not process any requests related to them. Like if the governments ask us to do stuff, we say no. Well, they just changed that. And they kind of have to because Durov's like under the gun, literally there in France. He can't leave. And he's saying good stuff and clearly being strong-armed into making these changes. And he says, using laws from the pre-smartphone era to charge a CEO with crimes committed by third parties on the platform he manages is a misguided approach. Super soft language for something so serious. Building technology is hard enough as it is, he continued. No innovator will ever build new tools if they know they can be personally held responsible for potential abuse of those tools. Duh. We've been committed to engaging with regulators to find the right balance between privacy and security. Yes, we stand by our principles. Our experience is shaped by our mission to protect our users in authoritarian regimes. But we've always been open to dialogue. Cough, cough, I have a gun to my head, guys. So sorry, but you're going to be screwed in the short term, but don't worry, like we'll figure things out in the future. So then, very interesting, you have this... Actually, I'm going to do that in part 2. I decided. So we're going to skip here to this very strange thing. So in Aurora, Colorado, there's this thing where Venezuelan prison gangs have been taking over apartment complexes. And it's gotten so much national press at this point that the mayor of Aurora, Colorado himself has been interviewed. And he said briefly and then kind of clammed up and like was realizing that maybe he was treading in deep waters that were dangerous and nasty things lurk beneath the surface. But he said that these gangs are being funded and directed by someone, these Venezuelan prison gangs. Super interesting. Now, all of a sudden, critical infrastructure is under threat from these migrant cartel workers, right? And you have people who are witnesses being run off the road, assaults on like the catalyst, all these different aspects of the Permian oil basis oil fields, which make no sense whatsoever if you're trying to make money other than the theft of oil, diesel fuel, copper wire. But catalyst elements is a great way to cripple the oil industry. I don't know how much money there is in catalyst elements or copper wire. And also, if you're going to go for copper wire, you'd be much better off getting copper wire out of houses that are owned by BlackRock and Blackstone that have been sitting empty for 3 years, right? Plus you can squat in them, right? So why would you be targeting something that's actually has quite a bit of security around it, oil fields, when you could be targeting wide open things where there's copper, right? You could be targeting electric vehicle charging stations, you could be targeting 5G towers, right? There's all these things where they could be getting metals, but they would run directly in opposition to what the Molochians want to do. Whereas attacking oil, that's just helpful to them. And it's also good if it helps to cause problems with the economy and the infrastructure and more chaos, because they believe that if they create enough chaos, they'll be able to come out and create this authoritarian Molochian regime because they've done it so many times in the past. And so, yeah, if they're being funded and controlled by someone, how interesting that they're now targeting Texas-based oil companies. Very, very curious. And so, one moment. And so I think that that is a good place to wrap things up for part one. And in part two, we're going to be talking about how there is, just a second, let me pull my notes up. In part two, we're going to be talking about this sudden historical revisionism around World War II. And I'm not saying it's revisionism that's false necessarily. I'm simply saying that it's very, very odd that all of a sudden there is two things that I'm noticing all over the place. There's this sudden interest and discussion of Lucifer as a misunderstood being, which I agree with, but putting even a far more positive spin on Lucifer than I would do, right? And you're also seeing a sudden revision on what happened during World War II. Now, I will admit, World War II is without question the murkiest event of the past 100 years. World War I, pretty murky as well, but World War II is the murkiest, strangest, oddest event, despite it being the most covered historical event, probably in human history. Maybe the Roman Empire has more documentation and more books written on it. I don't think so, though. I think World War II is the most exhaustively covered historical event, and yet we know with even a cursory examination of World War II that there's massive lies about it. And let me give one that's not up for debate anymore: the bombing of Pearl Harbor. It's very clear that FDR knew ahead of time, and it's also clear that the U.S. forced the Empire of Japan's hand by levying sanctions against them around rubber, oil, and steel ball bearings in particular, which were devastating to the emerging industrial Japan as a regional power. Blocking them off of those things, which they had no domestic production or ability to produce any of those things, forced the Japanese hand to where they had to first go into Asia, and also then they felt, it was obviously foolish, but they felt that they needed to attack the United States, which brought the US into the war. And so that's just a single example of one of the many, many things that have happened that were very different from the way mainstream history describes World War II. But I'm, of course, talking about the Germans. And so in part two, we're going to be talking about that and how this sudden revisionism around World War II, and in particular the Germans and their motivations and so forth, which has just come out of nowhere, and it's suddenly being pushed by algorithms on all social media, it seems, to anyone who's slightly like awake and aware, right? People who are at Luciferian or most high consciousness are having this directed at them. Why now? That was like 80 years ago, the end of World War II, right? Almost 80 years ago now. Why now this sudden desire to dig up and rediscuss what happened in Germany? We have a German man, right, of German lineage, is about to ascend to the presidency a second time, Donald Trump, aka Drumpf, right, who's proud to be German. He's German and Scottish, right? I'm actually mostly German and Scottish myself. Well, actually, I guess I'm mostly Irish, but I'm also Scottish and German quite a bit, hence last name Ferguson, right? So interesting that all of a sudden they're talking about it. And how does that relate to the bottleneck event the angels keep talking about? So if you're interested, you want to go on the Patreon and you want to check out the, you can sign up for a 1 week free, and you can get tonight's members only live stream for free. Check it out. See if you think it's worth it. And then it's $11 a month, right? Which is less than $3 a week. That's less than a coffee out per week in order to help support this channel. And you get access to all this additional content, including angelic prophecies, all this kind of stuff. So sign up if you're interested, and you'll get part two, members only, free tonight. And you can also get access to all the prior member only lives for 1 week to evaluate it and see if you'd like to support the channel, which I hope you do. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the members only live chat soon. All right, bye.